Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. Hope all is well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me is probably one of the most famous content marketers out there. Is that true? Pep with Conversion XL.
That's not how I identify myself.
How do you identify yourself? Let's hear it.
I would call myself an entrepreneur because, you are what you repeatedly do. And I do produce and publish content too and market it. So it's not wrong. But yeah, so I run 3 businesses actively and business.
All right. So what are those 3 businesses? Which is kind of like taking the most of your soul at this point?
So 10 years ago, I started CXL as a conversion optimization agency. And then 5 years later, I added a e-learning arm to it. And so we spun off the agency into Spiro, which is a leading conversion optimization agency. And CXL is now an e-learning company. And then 2 years ago, I started Winter, which is a B2B SaaS company. And today in Spiro, I have no active role other than being on the board. In CXL and Winter, I'm all in. On Winter, I'm more tactical, hands-on. I'm doing support and onboarding and, things like that. And on CXL, I'm more strategic, like where are we going, things like that.
Yeah. I feel like for me, that's the goal for, my projects is to move into this kind of like strategic or like a board. But also there's just something about like being on the ground of an early project and getting those early wins and, starting things. Do you find it difficult to find balance, or is it because you waited until your businesses were at a certain point that you could tackle these new projects?
I've always been like an entrepreneurial guy, like starting things and, even before business, like the party organizer, and in college, I was like the class president and part of student organizations. And so I just like to start shit, which is, also I have 3 businesses. Like, it's not like I need it more. I just want, it just comes. And so I'm also, I think, strongest in this 0 to 1 phase where, you got to know your strengths. And my strengths are not like spreadsheets and operations. And so when the business gets to a certain size, there are other people who are far better than me doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, so today I balance myself between 2 businesses, mainly CXL and Winter. And it is hard, mainly in the context switch. So it's not a journey I strongly recommend.
Yeah. I found that I'm trying to start a new brand in a similar space for grooming, beauty, and moving from a strategic role to an execution role is very, very challenging. Like, I've almost essentially lost my abilities to run my calendar, to like show up on time, to like email people back in a timely manner.
Yeah, I also feel like, just in terms of life has seasons, so when I started the business 10 years ago, I stayed up like late into the night writing blog posts and like hustling, like putting in a lot of time muscle. And today, I'm getting older, I have 2 kids and wife, and, you need balance in all things. And so I'm kind of like, I have less time hustle in me. So I got to like work smarter. And I do feel frustrated in Winter where, the business is early stage, so there's less money and resources available. And then I do roll my eyes when I need to do some technical shit, but like some things I just don't want to do anymore. I don't want to write blog posts anymore, really.
Yeah. I mean, I share the kind of same problem. And my fear that I have is like, I'm throwing good money after bad, trying to build something up that may or may not be feasible in the market.
It's true. Yeah.
So like, how do you like kind of, manage those expectations or make sure that you just don't start a project that becomes a money suck that, all these resources go in and then they never come back out?
It's hard because it is a bet, right? It is a gamble. I mean, not like slot machine gamble because you're more in control of things. Yeah, sometimes I do wonder, especially it's easy to get caught in the comparison trap. Oh, look at that startup, like how fast they're like growing. And so with Winter, this is year 1 for us. And we're going to do like 450K this year. For a year 1 bootstrap, totally solid result. Do I want more? Absolutely, I want more. And like, look at all these other guys like doing, whatever, 10 million in year 1. I also want that. So it's important to manage your inner game there and not play the comparison game, but look at your progress.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a never-ending battle, or at least a never-ending battle that I've faced. And it's a good reminder. It's, like where are you at today versus where are you at yesterday, and not where, your competitor's at. Or
Yeah, you can only truly be happy if you look over your shoulder and measure your progress. Whereas if you look at the distance between you and where you want to be, like the dream, the goal, and you just measure the gap between where you are now and where you want to go, you're going to be always miserable. Like, because, it's a moving target, it's like the horizon. You keep marching toward whatever number it is, and then you'll never get there.
you're from Estonia, right?
Yep.
When did you move to the States?
I want to say 2008, 2009, something like this.
Okay. What I'm always curious to hear is just like a non-native born person's interpretation of what it's like to be in America, and what the opportunities are like, or the culture is like, that is different from what you experienced growing up in Estonia.
Well, I'm not an economic migrant, and I don't identify with the immigrant thing at all. When I read people are like, "Oh, we're the immigrants," like that's not me. That's not how I think of myself. I'm here because of a girl. I fell in love with a girl from Austin, and it just random. And I was already an entrepreneur before that. Was already making money, so I didn't come here for the economic opportunity. So it's completely for other reasons. I mean, I've been here now long enough where I've kind of forgotten what the difference is. I mean, Europe and the United States, for the most part, are very similar, like the Western culture. So it was a pretty easy, seamless integration transition.
Yeah. And so you've always had that entrepreneurial fire
Mhm.
inside of you.
Yeah, the main thing was like my other businesses before were in other languages. So, I was big in Estonia, and I had built a business in Panama, Central America. And when I came to the States, I was like, well, when I started my blog, Conversion Excel blog in 2011, I was like, well, blogging in English, as not in my native language, it felt daunting in the beginning. But then, got over it.
One thing you talked about earlier was you're built for 0 to 1, and then you kind of hand it over to people once a business has established. Like, first of all, at what point do you know the time is right to start moving it over? And then the second question is like, how do you find those people?
So in my case, I started a consulting company, and then what happened to me personally was just I got tired of consulting. And even though I was at the top of my game, so I was recognized as, the conversion optimization guy. And so basically I was like retiring at my peak. I just couldn't do it anymore. I got burned out. And so I was actively looking for a way out. And what I did was we surveyed our email list and asked, what else could we sell to you if we were smart enough to sell it to you? And they said, oh, courses and whatever, things like that. And okay, e-learning, that's a new challenge. Great. And at the time, my team at the agency they were afraid to like, can the business survive my departure? Because I was also the name. But we had other managers in place. So the company was at a time big enough where there was like middle management, so to speak. And I have a co-founder, and that co-founder is different from me. He's not like a starter. He's like a operations admin. So he wasn't maybe building and thinking how to make this bigger, but he was like running the ship without changing the ship. And now at me doing winter, and this is similar dynamic. So I have like heads off. I have head of growth, head of ops, head of product who manage teams. And so really the day-to-day execution is run by these people. And I'm like at CXL, and I'm like, vision and strategy, still recruiting for key roles. So I think that is the key step. So you have people who are like functional heads in place that you trust. And I have talked to other entrepreneurs about whether you groom from inside versus, recruit from outside. And I haven't really had the experience of recruiting from outside. So it's possible to make it work, I'm sure. And I really nurture it from inside. So if somebody who's showing promise, like somebody who's proactive. So the guy running our agency today, he was just from day one, he was super proactive, like owning shit. Always a good sign.
Yeah. So you're looking for that fire. And then the agency is essentially hands off. Like you're no longer doing strategy there.
Yeah, now I'm completely out. So I think there was 1 year of transition where I still did work for the agency too, and I was part of some accounts and whatever. But now, like, yeah, I've been out 4 years or something. I mean, just a quarterly board meeting, and that's
Yeah.
it.
A lot of entrepreneurs, I feel like, want to sell the business rather than kind of move into this board. What was your decision process behind keeping the business?
I guess you got to look at like compare the two options. So agency is not an easy business to sell, and two, the valuation is not a factor of revenue but EBITDA. And agencies are not very profitable. A 20% profit margin is great, and so an exit if you want to sell, then a really good agency gets like a 5x multiple on their EBITDA. And so you do the math here, like, well, how much money are we looking at here? Like, actually, not a lot, you know. So it's not like a subscription business or a SaaS business where it's like 85% gross margins, and then you can get 10x multiples on your ARR, something like this. So that was like just a math question, right? And so I'm not saying that I'm opposed to exit down the line, but the business just needs to get bigger for the numbers to make sense. And it's a generous cash cow because really how I've ended up with 3 businesses is that business number 1 was profitable enough. So I could invest the profits in a new line of business. And now I have 2 businesses that are making annual profit and use those profits to start winter. I think for SaaS businesses, and I'm not that sure about e-commerce, you know this better than I do, but for SaaS businesses, really 10 million annual recurring revenue is like the spot where multiples get more generous. It's like sustainability milestone. Like if your business is 2 million a year, you can go under tomorrow, but shit can happen. Whereas if you reach 10 million, it's more solid.
Going back to the transition to the team member, how do you, I think there's a lot of bootstrap entrepreneurs who love this idea of like promoting from within. The question I always have is, like a leadership role like this, do you introduce equity into the equation, or is it just going to be like a, profit sharing bonus, or like how do you make sure that they feel tied to the results of the business, but at the same time, like I'm a control freak, like the idea of giving up equity is very challenging to me. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a limiting thing or how you've dealt with that.
Yeah. So obviously, there's no one right answer here. So it all depends. In SaaS, I think you got to do equity because that's just really the norm of the industry at large. Like you can't recruit top names without some, stock grants for like VP C-level people and stock options for everyone else. Whereas in agency world, that is uncommon or unheard of, really. Like nobody gives equity. And by nobody, I mean just very few. And so on the agency side, we haven't given out any equity. We have had like profit sharing plans and things like that and hitting certain milestones. So it's like virtual equity.
I want to segue into, conversion and talking about conversion, e-commerce conversion. I think one of the things I've always struggled with is just, at our size, upper 7-figure business, like the data is always going to be kind of muddy. And like, how should a leader within an e-commerce organization interpret data? How much faith should they put in the data? And then like, what is the process to really make sure they're moving in the right direction based on data rather than just gut feel? Or, when should you just kind of go on your gut and not invest the resources that it takes to do proper testing?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on what scope of decisions we're talking about here. Like changing our positioning, brand, and the future of the company, huge. And I think here, like, yes, you need data, market signals, and your own data and so on to make a bet. And you use a lot of your founder, I want to say opinion is maybe the wrong word here, but point of view on where it's going to go. Whereas if it's a micro decision, like optimizing your product page layout, like you remove all your opinions and it's very easy to just do a pure data driven decision there because you can measure every click, every scroll. It depends on data. So at your size business, you'll have adequate data for that kind of stuff and to do data driven conversion optimization and experimentation. I like what Jeff Bezos has popularized. How fast or slow to make decisions. It's 2x2 matrix. Like basically, one axis is like how reversible is the decision? Should it be wrong? And the other one is like the impact of the decision. And so for only in one quadrant, when if it's irreversible and high impact, you should decide slowly. In every other case, you decide fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also how I like to think about these things.
You mentioned Bezos. Where are you taking a lot of your inspiration, or where are you finding a lot of your resources to learn?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, earlier in my career, I read ferociously whoever. And today, also, I want to have, I guess more strategic things on my plate. I'm much more careful where I get my information from. And I really choose it based on what is important to me today. So for the last year, I've been really nerding out on all kinds of strategy stuff, strategy books, strategy thinkers, anything from, I don't know if you want specific names or, and today, like right now, I'm really focused on studying network effects because winter is essentially a two-sided marketplace. And so I need more education here. And some right now reading Andrew Chen's book, The Cold Start Problem. It's very relevant to the challenge at hand.
Yeah. I think for me, it's always kind of been like just trying to find really intelligent people and learn from them. Books have always been challenging, and I've always kind of appreciated like the in-person experience. And you put on the conference, about a month ago, I guess, bringing people back together and allowing that exchange of ideas and, kind of that growth through communication.
For sure. I've been throwing conferences for 10 years. Usually, before COVID, it was 2 conferences a year. And absolutely like that space. And also like informal hangouts with fellow entrepreneurs or other, just adjacent business people, business lunches, very inspirational. Yeah. I mean, and today I'm also consuming more and more micro content. I want to say Twitter and LinkedIn, for SaaS stuff, Jason Lemkin, everybody's favorite. Also mine. Because the guy's brilliant,
It's funny you mentioned LinkedIn. Before we hit record, you said like LinkedIn's driving a significant amount of volume for you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. For winter, I want to say 90% of the demo pipeline I'm generating through my LinkedIn content.
Is it just organic? Or are you boosting it or?
Organic. And just every single day for years already. Every single day I'm posting on Twitter and LinkedIn. Often 80% the same stuff. Sometimes on Twitter, I'm more casual. I tweet more often. On LinkedIn, it's just, once a day. And so I have like an overarching strategy of like, basically I'm driving a narrative, a point of view, and expressing what I actually believe in. So it's not bullshit, but I'm being deliberate and careful how I go about it. And so I'm raising awareness around certain issues and offering a point of view on how things should be done and what somebody should think about. And obviously my business is then the way to do those things.
So
it's very effective.
What is the content? I'm looking here. Is it video? Is podcast recordings, kind of clips like that?
So the video podcast recordings, that's more like the podcast promo clips, and it never gets as much engagement as just written content on LinkedIn. I'm surprised actually. So LinkedIn, in my case at least, they strongly prefer written content. And so I'm mainly talking about things like positioning, messaging, differentiation, go-to-market strategy. So those topics and buyer intelligence. And so Winter obviously is a B2B buyer intelligence tool that helps people with positioning, differentiation, messaging, all those things. And so I'm just opening people's eyes to look at the problems they have through a new lens.
Yeah. And then is there a lot of conversation that happens in LinkedIn, like in the comments that you'll continue that conversation forward, or is it?
It could be, yeah. So I think LinkedIn is technically great for discussion. But you could sink your whole day into social media and never get anything done. So I'm more like a come in, post my ideas and fuck off. And I'll come every now and then, maybe twice a day. I'll check the comments and reply if they're good.
High quality, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is the future of winter look like? You're going to continue to grow it. Obviously, you've got this $10 million annual run rate as one of your short-term targets, I would assume, like just continue to build that out and build the product out. And
yeah, so I got two bootstrap businesses, CXL and Spiro. So those are kind of, as an entrepreneur, like from a personal perspective, this is like my safety net, or kind of like got my back kind of secured. And so with winter, I can take bigger risks. And so this has opportunity to be really big, because we're tackling a big opportunity in the market. And here I'm also looking to include possibly some venture capital and play a game that I haven't played before, which is, be a venture-backed startup. So it's new learnings, because like I've done the bootstrap slow growth path. And so it's more exciting for me to try something else. There's new learning, like more interesting for me.
Yeah. You mentioned you've got like that network effect, which I think is to a certain degree like that chicken or the egg, like you can't do one thing without the other. How do you start that process? How do you kickstart it? I feel like that's got to be the hardest part.
Yeah. Well, Andrew Chen has this nice quote that I love, which is like, if you have a chicken and an egg problem, buy the chicken. And so that's really what we did as well. So on winter, it's supply side and demand side, much like in Uber, there's riders and drivers. And so for us, it's software vendors, which is the demand side, that need the supply side of people buying B2B software. And so in order to sell something to the vendors, I needed to create the supply side first, and we got it with money. So we invested money in recruiting a bunch of people, and also we pay them money. So what we do is, let's say, if you work in marketing in SaaS, MarTech vendors want to hear your opinion about their sales pitch or their marketing copy or whatever. So, and then in order to give that feedback or facilitate, there's money involved to compensate for that time. And so we really threw money at the supply side, much like Uber did, driver sign-up bonuses and things like that.
So it's really focusing on that supply side first, and then,
that's the asset that you can sell then to the demand side. So you have something to generate demand for. So my pitch essentially is like, hey, so you're selling let's say your HR software, payroll software, whatever. So you're selling to HR managers, directors of HR. Ever wonder what you're saying on your website or in your emails or ads? How is it landing on your target audience? Are they like, wow, this is so interesting? Or are they more like, oh, this is so boring? Like, or which is which? What are you saying that's interesting on what's boring? And then that creates curiosity in them. And in order for me to deliver on that value proposition, I need to have these people ready so I can put the marketing message in front of them.
That's cool, man. Where can people obviously we talked about your businesses. Where can people kind of learn more about you, follow you, try using winter?
Yeah, Twitter and LinkedIn. As I said, I'm posting daily or almost every day. And I think the content is good. Like if you're into strategy and go-to-market and competing on other things than features, then I'm your guy.
And that's PEEPLAJA.
That is accurate.
And that's Laha? Is that how you pronounce it? Or
Laya.
Laya. Like a Y.
Like a German J, like Jägermeister.
Yeah, there you go. Sweet, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, kind of sharing your experiences and building the businesses and keeping things going and, spreading your brain juice as well. And that's kind of a weird way of saying it, but appreciate it, man.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine.
Yeah, man. Well, this has been another e-commerce conversations. Hope you guys were able to pick up a nugget or two. Thanks, Pep, for coming by. Cheers. Keep on growing.